This week in Texas, we're focusing on DACA.
So DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and it was created by Obama.
They've long been protected from deportation under DACA as the government and the courts figure out a potential path towards citizenship. DACA allows for those under its protection to go to school and work, but could it be coming to an end? Nobody is sure. In the next half hour, we speak with DACA recipients about their uncertainty.
My parents took me and I applied for DACA. I vaguely remember it, but I do remember I've had it for a very long time.
We have a conversation with Houston Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia about her legislation that would provide that clear path.
They were in limbo.
And we discuss the issue with reporter Daniela Hurtado, getting her perspective as she covers the rapidly changing landscape of immigration and immigration enforcement. It's a special edition of This Week in Texas. Hello again. I'm Tom Abrams. For the past 13 years, DACA has provided a sense of security for more than 500,000 undocumented people who came to the United States as children. But that sense of security has turned into uncertainty and anxiety under the current immigration landscape. This past summer, the Department of Homeland Security told DACA recipients they should consider self-deportation. Just this past week, the Trump administration announced a new plan that would allow them to begin accepting applications for DACA once again. But those who get DACA would no longer have work permits. For a sense of what's happening now in the minds of those who have DACA, we spoke with two recipients living here in Houston and with an immigration attorney. Here are their stories. Meet Marco Cruz Linares.
I was in Estado de Mexico. I'm one of those in Mexico, whenever you're born, wherever you're born doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the state you're going to be registered. I was born in Veracruz, and I was not registered until months later in the Estado de Mexico. So technically, I was born in Veracruz, and I'm from the Estado de Mexico.
And Kenya Cueva.
I was 4 years old. I was very young along with my family. My oldest brother, he was, I think, 13 at the time. So, yeah, I was very young. I don't really remember much of it.
Both are legally in the United States under DACA. Kenya works for a law firm. Marco wants to become a lawyer.
For me, it has given me opportunities to pursue my dreams. Since I was a little kid, I wanted to be an attorney.
Honestly grateful that I have DACA. I'm able to provide for my family, being able to have a job. And I did start at an early age to start working around 17. I was still in high school at the time, but I'm really grateful that I do have it. It's exactly what my family and I needed to be here and for us to provide and just have a roof over our heads. I'm just worried that they're gonna take it away and we might not be able to have it or just have a job at the time. It's kind of worrisome, an everyday thing. My parents as well, they do worry. Since we're all immigrants, we are not sure what the next day might provide for us.
Potentially, I could still be protected from being deported here in Texas, but I might not be able to work. So that is a concern because I've been living here my entire life since I was 9 years old. And I am a Texan, right? The way I see the world, the way I see everything is like an American. And unfortunately, I may have to leave the state that I love just because I won't be able to work here no more. I think there are people advocating for us. I know Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia and a couple of other congressmen and senators, they're trying to push the DREAM Act again. And I hope they are successful because us dreamers, we do contribute to this country. The taxes that I pay now compared to the taxes I paid before I had DACA, there's so much more. The opportunities I've been given are so much more. I met so many other people that have DACA. They're doing great things. They're going to college. They're going to pursuing their dreams, whether in the private or the public sector. So I think it makes a big difference.
Among those advocating is immigration attorney Molly Full with Naimi Salem and Associates.
There are a lot of people who are fighting for them that unfortunately the laws can change so much with immigration. And that's the biggest thing with immigration is it's constantly changing. And especially when we have a new administration, we see shifts one way or the other. But all I can tell them is that we're fighting for them. We know it's a scary time, and as new laws come out, then we find ways to respond. From my perspective, we do need to find a way to fully legalize DACA and codify it in the way that it can't be just taken away and used as a pawn. Because right now, people's DACA status and the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program is very much a pawn that can be shifted with the political agenda. And that's really unfair whenever you think about how many people's lives are at stake. So I do think the first step is making sure that this is a permanent solution in some ways, and whether that's a permanent status or whatnot, so that it's not something that can be shifting with the time so much.
Still, the uncertainty lingers, as does the anxiety.
It's kind of scary. We do live in a scary world at the time, and we might never know what might happen. It's with the protests and everything, it's very, very difficult for us that do have the DACA.
I would like the DREAM Act to finally pass and for us to have a permanent residency here in the United States and a pathway to citizenship, of course, right? Of course, like they do have to go through a whole process, right? Because even for DACA right now, I have to go through a whole process. It's not like I just go and they give it to me. They have to do a background check. They have to make sure that I have committed no crimes, no felonies. And I'm pretty sure if the DREAM Act was to pass, it will be similarly. It's not just going to be something that you're just going to give. Of course, there's going to be certain stipulations that an individual must meet for them to qualify for it.
There is legislation in Washington that would provide a permanent path to citizenship for those who receive DACA. The legislation is sponsored by Houston Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, and she joined us in studio to talk about it.
DACA is still in what we call legal mumbo jumbo. You know, there was a lawsuit filed. It was to stop the program from being implemented because it was done by executive order under Obama. Back then, executive orders were taboo. You know, the Republicans always said you don't legislate and you don't make laws with executive orders. Of course, now it's the complete opposite. Everything seems to be about executive orders through the current administration. So there was a lawsuit filed, and it stopped the program. So it's on a pause, if you will. It was here at the Houston court, then it went up to the Fifth Circuit. It's now at the Fifth Circuit. Ultimately, the Supreme Court will probably have to make a decision as to whether or not the program should stay. But in the meantime, the good thing is that all the kids that had already been through the process and received protections, they can continue to renew. They just can't. They're just not taking any new applications. And what it does, it puts a pause and gives the child who came here with their parents through no fault of their own. If you pick up your kid and say, we're moving to Kansas, the kid goes. They have no real choice. Same thing with people who came in through Mexico or other parts. Their children came. The children know no other country except this one in their heart and their mind and their soul. They're American. They know nothing else. They've been through our schools. They speak English. And the order just says, we will pause your deportation. You cannot be deported. You can stay here. You'll get protections, and you will be able to be a citizen. And it's not just anybody who comes through. I mean, they could come in today and they wouldn't be able to do it because the program is on pause. But the child would have to have been here prior to, I think it was 2012. It has to be someone who's a student, has been here for about 10 years. So there's criteria for who's eligible. The key point, though, is that right now the program's on a pause, but those 80 to 100,000 kids that have the protection cannot be deported.
Now, this was never intended by President Obama or any subsequent administration to be a permanent solution. What has taken Congress so long to find that permanent solution?
Well, it's real simple. Republicans really don't want a solution because it's a good play for them in every election. They like scaring people about immigration and painting everyone as a thug, a thief, a cartel member, a gang member, a murderer. They don't talk about the firefighter. They don't talk about the nurse. They like to paint a picture, and it helps them. They'd rather run on the scare tactics and the hot button issue that they make it than to find a real solution, because the solutions are there. We have passed the Dream and Promise Act twice out of the House of Representatives. I'm the sponsor now. We've got over 200 sponsors, including 1 Republicans, which means it's bipartisan. We've got 100 organizations who support it. When we poll it, it polls that 70% of the people believe in Dreamers and believe that they should be able to get protections because they were just kids.
So will the Supreme Court then ultimately make the decision about how to put this to bed?
I think for Dreamers, yes, because it's already in the Fifth Circuit. Now, whether or not they'll really have an opinion and which case would lead up to real immigration reform is yet to be seen, because we've not really passed a bill. We've not really litigated that whole big issue. And I doubt that we will. We know that Trump himself said that he wanted to do something for the Dreamers, but that's just something he said during the campaign. We would challenge him to look at the Dream and Promise Act. We've been working with Representative Salazar, who's a Republican in Florida, to try to get more Republican sponsors, because they all say, oh, no, we support Dreamers, but you can't get them to sign on as sponsors. You can't get them to help us move the bill. They just say that for political purposes, but don't really work on it.
There is, I guess, some concern that even though Dreamers don't face the risk of deportation, they may lose the ability to have employment. Is that something that you see as an imminent threat?
That is something that is very possible, and quite frankly, even deportation is something that's quite possible. We regrettably, most horrible things have happened with the Trump deportation efforts. We've seen citizen children be deported. We saw one case stemming here from Texas. 10-year-old cancer. She'd been coming to the medical center where she had surgery for 2 years. She had the surgery. She came back and forth from the valley for it, and never had a problem. This last February, when she was feeling sick, and they brought her up for an emergency visit, they got stopped at a checkpoint near the Donna area in the valley, and this time they harassed them, they ridiculed them, they told them that all their papers and the birth certificates were false. They literally put a gun to the family's head and said, okay, you two, the parents were undocumented, but all 4 children were citizen children. They were carrying their birth certificates with them. They were carrying a letter from our Texas Medical Center Hospital saying, this is urgent care, must be seen, life or death. They had letters from a lawyer saying we're working with them on getting them their documentation. It had worked for 2 years. The only thing different this year was Donald Trump.
Our thanks to Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia for that interview. Coming up next on This Week in Texas, a conversation with ABC13's Daniela Hurtado. Welcome back. I'm joined now by ABC13's Daniela Hurtado to talk more about immigration as a broader subject and also about DACA. I know you've done a tremendous amount of reporting from the border here in Southeast Texas about immigration. Where do things stand as far as the people who live here in Texas?
Yeah, I think that's the heart, right? The people that this impacts day in and day out. We cover areas like, the city of Cleveland, where there is a large population of people that are undocumented. And when we talk to people in those communities, oftentimes they express their fear for not wanting to share their stories, trying to protect their families, trying not to cause any rifts or alarms for their families or their communities. I think one of the biggest things is that even though they are going through their legal processes, right, but they still don't have status, many of these families are concerned that when they go to court, what could happen to them? Because we are seeing reports, and we have in the last several months seen that there have been ICE agents at these court hearings as well, deporting families. So there's a lot of fear. I think that's the biggest part right now with people in our community on what is next, what their future looks like, and whether or not they'll have to go back to countries that they oftentimes fled from, trying to seek a better life.
Now, the Department of Justice or Homeland Security recently said, if you are here under DACA, self-deport. What does that do for those who are here with relatively protected status since the Obama administration, but sort of this legal uncertainty?
Yeah. Conversations I've had with people that are dreamers, DACA recipients, is that, you know, you're going back to a country where you left years ago, right? And many of them are afraid of that uncertainty of what their life could look like, going back to a place that they don't recognize, that they don't have any ties to anymore. I mean, they were brought here as children. So going back in your 30s, 40s, right, to a country where you don't have any ties to is quite terrifying to many of these people. We did a story, or actually I talked to someone months ago when this was first all coming out, about whether they have protections, what their future looks like here. And the fact that there's so much uncertainty puts people on this moving floor, right, of, okay, I wake up tomorrow, will I have a future in the United States? And if not, what does my future look like outside of my country, whether that's in Mexico, Central America, South America, in Europe, wherever these people came from?
Now, you were in the border during the Biden administration. You've been at the border since President Trump took office again. Talk about the changes you've seen in these border communities.
Yeah, so when we went to the border 3.5 years ago, I remember it was in the height of people crossing over from Mexico to El Paso. That's where we were doing our coverage in that border community then. And droves of people, hundreds, thousands of people in the streets in these border communities, desperate to find legal status here in the United States. So much desperation, people with no real plan trying to get, you know, any kind of help and any kind of status here in the country. Towns that were filled to the brim, Tom, to the brim. Like, people were just on the streets. There was in El Paso this area called Little Venezuela. It was a tent city with hundreds of people.
I remember your reports from
hundreds of people. And being back there recently was completely different. People weren't in those border communities anymore. Of course, many of them were bussed out to other major cities across the country, as we've seen. But, you know, just to see the city itself and talk to shelters shut down. We went a few months ago, and I remember I was telling my photographer, I said, man, it is so different. And I was showing him videos of when we were there 3 years ago versus now, and just how jarring it was to see how many people were crossing then versus crossing now. And as we were talking to border agents, we said, what's the difference? And they said, it's just without CBP1, that app that they were using to make appointments to be seen, it created a lot less people flowing into the country with that permission to, yes, get brought in and put into the legal system, but it just night and day to what we were seeing years ago versus now in 2025.
I do want to ask you about those who live along the border, because many who live along the border are also Hispanic or of Hispanic descent. How do they feel about the changes?
I think it depends. It depends what border community you're in. It depends people's walks of life, of course. We went to the area where Shelby Park is, and people there were like, man, it's so different to what it was. And for them, it even impacts the people that come because there are people that go to Mexico and from Mexico, they work here, they live there, or vice versa.
They come across the bridges.
But even that flow has minimized so much. So you see those areas like Eagle Pass, and even Eagle Pass's downtown has changed so much because of the changes that we've seen with immigration and people being afraid to cross because they're not sure if they're going to get deported, even if it is for a day, even if they do have permission to be here. There's just so much misinformation. There's a lot of people that, you know, are misinformed because of these WhatsApp groups, right? You have these messaging apps where people are sending information between family members, between friends. Maybe it's harmless, but it's misinformation that can create fear. And that fear is what we're seeing in a lot of these communities. In Eagle Pass, we saw it too. I mean, there's still a lot of people of course, in these towns because people live there, but you really do see the difference. And as we're talking to people, they talk about the difference of, I mean, just 2 years, 3 years difference since we were out there.
Danielle Hurtado, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Giving your perspective on where we are with regard to immigration and DACA. This Week in Texas. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm joined now by Cesar Espinoza. He is the executive director of FIEL, a nonprofit that helps immigrants deal with the various issues they have. I imagine that DACA, you're a DACA recipient, is among those that is the most confusing.
Absolutely. I mean, the DACA program from the beginning was a program that was unprecedented in a good way. And now, after 13 years, it's still a very confusing, very challenging thing, not because of the program itself, but because of all the challenges that have gone before it.
And so where does it sit as we speak right now?
So just this morning, I was hearing an update that it seems like the U.S. government is supposed to be taking applications in the near future here, supposed to be approving, but we don't want to give people false hope. From right now to that point, anything can happen. There can be an injunction. And so this has been the nature of DACA for the last 7 years, that once things start to move, there's lawsuits and a lot of legal red tape that we have to go through.
So we know that a lot of attention has been paid to undocumented immigrants in general. Do you feel like those who are here legally under DACA sort of fall through the cracks in all of this discussion about immigration reform?
Well, in reality, if we look at the program itself, a lot of people say that folks, take money from the system. But in fact, we have seen the complete opposite. For all of DACA recipients all over the U.S., about 48% of them have bought homes, 72% of them have bought brand new cars. So they're actually improving the economy. But what happens in this whole narrative of anti-immigration and things like that, they often get overseen because they're actually a very small number of the population. We're talking about less than about 800,000 people actually are still in part of the DACA program.
So what would you like to see happen as a recipient of DACA, as someone who advocates for immigrants?
It's important that people know that we're humans, that immigrants are humans. And it's important to know that, especially here in the Houston area, many of us live in mixed status families, meaning that we've been here for so long that some of our children, other relatives of ours are U.S. citizens. So if you shake the foundation of these homes and you take away people like me or other people that may be eligible for DACA, you're in essence shaking the lives of many U.S. citizens all over the country. And so in terms of the DACA recipients, 250,000 DACA recipients have at least one U.S. citizen kid. So their lives are also in turmoil, while this whole notion of DACA is in turmoil as well.
So what do you tell someone who comes to you for help and says, what do I do?
At the end of the day, we tell them, get the best advice, get good advice. Unfortunately, right now, we've also seen a lot of attorneys and a lot of people taking advantage of people's desperation. But we want people to know that there's still good people out there that will tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
But it changes day to day, though, almost, doesn't it?
Every single day, there's a new headline on immigration. There's a new policy on immigration. So we want people to be cautious and also be cautiously optimistic, because at one point, something's going to give, and we're hoping that we can push for more comprehensive immigration reform.
And so if you could write the law as it relates to DACA, what would you want to see?
For DACA recipients, we would like to see a pathway to residency or a pathway to permanency, because DACA itself is not legal status. It is a temporary protective status that basically suspends people deportation 2 years at a time. So if we could write the law, we would say that to put these folks on a pathway to residency or a better pathway so that they can be here and not be afraid to lose their livelihood or the lives that they have established here, many of them living here for over 2 decades.
Anything else you'd like to add?
It's just as important that, Houston is the Mecca, Houston is the mosaic of immigrants in the country, and whatever happens here, however we treat immigrants here, is going to be a snapshot of what the rest of the country will do in the next few years.
Cesar Espinoza, Executive Director of FIEL, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
And This Week in Texas, we'll be right back. That's it for This Week in Texas. We certainly appreciate you being with us. For all of our previous episodes, you can find them on demand at ABC13.com or wherever you stream ABC 13. For all of us here at This Week in Texas, I'm Tom Abrams. Have a great week, and until we see you again, be kind to one another.